Hello and welcome to Merging Vets and Players Thrive series. Today we're meeting with Jennifer Garrett. She is an internationally recognized leadership coach, speaker, author, Army lawyer, and former Fortune 100 corporate executive who has a passion for helping and inspiring others, pushing boundaries and driving individuals and organizations out of their comfort zones to achieve higher levels of success. Jen has become known as a high-performance strategist, branding architect, and virtual training expert by teaching individuals how to cross the goal line by using principles from American football and move the ball frameworks. With her football and business expertise, Jen's organization, Feel the Push, also works with the athletes as they transition off the field to be all-star players in life beyond the game. Jennifer's story is truly inspiring. As a teenage single parent, Jen learned life is not always an easy game to play and used football lessons to overcome adversity and complete 7 college degrees, 2 bachelors of science, some master's degrees, and a Juris Doctor, a master's of law, and a LLM in taxation. So she completed all of her graduate degrees working full-time while raising 5 children. In the business world, Jennifer is recognized as an outstanding leader. She has worked in many challenging positions where she demonstrated that she could not only lead teams, inspire others, but also deliver results. She sets high expectations for herself, never making excuses and always holding herself accountable. She also received the GE Women's Network Hall of Fame Real Life Hero Award. So I want to welcome Jen to our group, but we also have 2 others with us from Merging Vets and Players. We have Andy Ward, who is our Director of Training and Resources and a Navy veteran, and Susie Landolfi, who is our whole health clinician for MVP. So welcome, Jen. And any thoughts right off the bat before we kind of dive into this?
Well, thank you so much for sharing more about my bio with everyone. I'm really excited just to get in today's chat. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here.
We are thrilled to have you with us and thank you for joining us. So as we talked about a little bit of why your story is so inspiring, you were a single teenage parent. What were the struggles and the strengths? And what did you learn out of that? And I'm sure that really had a lot to do with how you succeeded in life.
Yeah, so the struggles, I mean, being a teenage parent, being a teenage single parent, just, being a kid yourself, trying to figure out where am I going to go with my life? I mean, I had a plan when I was done with high school on what I was going to do, and I was in college when I had my first son. I have 5 kids, as you mentioned, 4 boys, 1 girl. So my son is the oldest, and you're just trying to figure out, how do I navigate while supporting the family? There's obviously more expenses when you have to provide for somebody else as well. And then how do I figure out continuing to get my education while also having to raise the family? So that was, the biggest thing is, again, you're a kid. So you're 18 years old trying to figure out how to be an adult, but also how to be an adult of somebody else too, and all the expenses that go around with that. So I was very fortunate that I had my parents as a support system. And so I lived at home, went to school. I was actually in California. I went to Cal State Long Beach for undergrad, and my mom worked at the VA hospital right next door. So I would ride to work with her. My son would go to daycare at the VA hospital, and I would do my classes. So it was great to have a strong support system from my family to help me navigate the challenges of being a parent. And the first time you're a parent, you don't know what you're doing, right? The second time or third, you might not know everything to do too. So it's really about just trying to figure it out, and you have to adapt, adjust, overcome. That's something we say a lot in the military, right? And so, I mean, that's what all of us have to do with whatever life circumstances throw at us.
That is so true. And that first child, you're cleaning the binkies off, you're taking a million pictures. That last child is like, where's my photo album?
Right.
So
right.
did your mom serve? How did she get to be involved in the VA? And what was the moment that you decided, and maybe that led to you being in the military?
Yeah, my mom was never in the military, but she's always been a service to others type of person. And so my mom grew up in the Philippines, came over shortly after nursing school, and came to Chicago and started working at a hospital. And she was at another hospital for a few years and then began her journey at the VA hospital, where she worked for a little over 30 years and retired there. But she really just enjoyed helping other people and genuinely cared about wanting to make people's lives better. And she was doing it, in the healthcare space. And so I saw that growing up. I would volunteer in a hospital too. And I enjoyed, being able to make other people's days brighter. So I think for me, like ever since I was little, I always enjoyed making an impact, and I got so much joy out of knowing that you could make a difference for other people. When it came to service, I wanted to join the military when I was really young. I was 8 years old. Actually, I wanted to be an Air Force fighter pilot, and that was my goal. And so when I was in high school, was talking to recruiters, kind of figuring out what the process was going to be. And my plan was to, after college, commission into the Air Force and then go fly. Well, as you mentioned earlier, teenage single parent, so that kind of changed the plan a little bit. But even when I was in college, I still had that desire. But then I had another child, a daughter, while I was still an undergrad, and plans change things, or things change the plan. And so I ended up not going into the service then, but I had always had this desire to still serve. And so when I graduated undergrad, my first job out of college was actually working for the Department of the Navy as a civil servant. I was an engineer doing weapon system testing on Navy ships. Andy, you might know about Aegis class ships. And so it was great. I love being able to have that connection to the military service while not serving myself as a military service member. But in the back of my head, I still always wanted to do that. It was harder though, given that I had 2 kids and 3 kids, and still be able to balance the demands of a military career and a family as a single parent. So I knew that going into the service in an active duty capacity would be a little bit more challenging. So because you do have the reserve component of the service, I was able to then go into the service and serve in that capacity.
So maybe we're interested in finding out, of course, maybe a story. It could be an interaction, maybe somebody you met during your visits to the VA, engagements when we talk to folks at the VA and what they're going through and seeing that process. Or, one of your, maybe a funny story or something that really impacted you, that really stuck with you.
Well, it's interesting. I was thinking about what funny story has impacted me, and I feel like my life's been kind of boring in terms of like crazy, wild stories. But I do find that like every interaction that we have with people is an opportunity to learn and grow and to make an impact on them. And so for me, just going to the VA and being able to interact with so many people, there is one gentleman that stands out. His name was Joe, and Joe would see my mom regularly. As my mom progressed in her career, she ended up being a nurse educator and would see a lot of patients who were diabetics. And so Joe was one of these people, and Joe would always bring his guitar to the VA, and he was just full of energy. And I really just remember the vibe that he gave off and how he kept people in good spirits through his service to others with his music and just his upbeat personality. So I would say there's one person that I really that left an impression on me through my time going to the VA. It would be Joe. And I actually volunteered at the VA hospital when I was in college too, because I really just enjoyed that connection, being around those type of people, hearing the stories from people, and also just being able to bring some sort of shining light to some people's day.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that. And I think that's so important for people to get involved, whether it's the VA or any other veteran service organization like ours, right? In a way to give back to that community, which is so important. I would love now to introduce Andy Ward, who's our Director of Training, and she is also a Navy veteran, so she's going to take it from here.
Thank you, Lisa. Jen, we are so excited to have you on. All right, so what I feel is the most interesting thing about what you do is your whole love for football. So let's talk football. When did your love for football start? Tell us why football?
Yeah, so I'm from Chicago originally, grew up in the 80s with the 85 Bears. So great time to be a Bears fan. Now it's tough. It's been tough for a long time. I've always just I fell in love with the game when I was 4. What attracted me to the sport was, for one, football is a fast-paced game, right? So it's exciting. There's a lot going on, a lot of things moving. But what really intrigued me was the fourth quarter comebacks, and how watching the game on TV, on my small TV, seeing how these teams could come back from 2 touchdown, 3 touchdown deficits in the second half or the fourth quarter and still pull out the win. And I just found that fascinating. And so I started, like, I wanted to learn more about the game and like what you could learn from it, not at 4 to be successful, because I wasn't quite putting those pieces together, but I just found it really fascinating. And I just, fell in love with the game at such a young age, and then became a student of the game ever since.
That's awesome. So what are the 3 greatest football analogies for life?
It's a great question. So, Andy, that I wrote a book called Move the Ball that talks a lot about those analogies. And so I was thinking about what are some things that I think are really, really impactful and important. And the first one would be something that I analogize people to in the book, as I get people to think of themselves as being the quarterback when it comes to their own life. And then it's really up to you to drive the ball forward. It's not anybody else's job, but it's yours. And whether that's, doing something in life and a personal goal, or it comes to your career. I sit on the board at USC, University of Southern California, they have a Master's of Business for Veterans program. And I work with a number of veterans who are coming out of the service. And as you know, many of them aren't sure, like, how do I progress when it comes to my civilian career? And in the military, we're told, okay, you go to this school and you do these things, and then you'll be able to promote to that next rank. Well, in civilian life, it's not how it works. And so people think that there's a checklist, or that someone else is going to be doing something for them. And no, it's really up to you to be that quarterback and drive that forward, your career goals, business goals, whatever it is. So that's number one. The second, I would say, so in football, teams are always looking at getting another first down, right? So they can continue to move the ball down the field and eventually hopefully score a field goal or a touchdown. And so something that I tell people is, when it comes to your goals, career, business, family, whatever, you want to take we all should have big goals, right? But you want to take those big goals and then break them down into chunks, because sometimes the big goal is so big that it just seems overwhelming. And then that stresses us out, because life happens, we get busy, and then we don't do anything because we're just so overwhelmed at the thought of trying to accomplish this big thing. As an example, if you're looking at losing 100 pounds, right? If that's your goal, that's a big deal to lose that much weight. But if you break it down into, okay, this month I'm going to focus on 5 pounds or 10 pounds, right? And you think about, how am I going to do that thing just to get to that next little goal, or that next first down, then it makes the goal seem a lot more manageable. And then when you hit it and you lose those 5 pounds or 10 pounds or whatever, then you're excited to continue to keep going forward. And you don't feel like you have this daunting goal over your head, but you're just focused on the smaller piece. So that would be number 2. And then the third one is, and something that we see in football all the time, especially recently when the Chicago Bears played the Detroit Lions. The Bears were leading through the game. They had 3 interceptions, and you would have thought they would have won. However, there's this concept about playing the full game, the full 60. And I talk about this in the book too, which is you have to play the entire game. And at the end of that game, the Lions ended up taking the lead and won, because the Bears hadn't played the full 60 minutes of the game. How that translates to us in life is, while it's not 60 minutes, we have to continue to play the game until we've crossed the goal line. Well, one of 2 things happens. One, you have crossed the goal line, so you've achieved the goal. Or second, that goal is not valid anymore, and you have other priorities, so then you don't keep focusing on it. But so many people lose sight. Like there's a quote that like 99% of people fall short of their goal, like inches from the goal line, because they quit. Like you have to keep playing the game.
Absolutely. So football, very much a team sport. That leads right into the next question. What does team mean to you, and how do you foster team in your daily life?
Yeah, so team for me is about people coming together to achieve the goal, whatever that goal might be. And everyone's got their role that they contribute on the team. And for me, when I'm either a part of a team or leading the team, it's really about how do I bring my best version forward in a way that I'm also inspiring others to bring their best version forward, and tapping into the expertise of those people so that we really are the strongest team that we can be, because everybody's got their lane that they're playing, they're operating in, everyone's got their perspectives and their expertise. So it's tapping into those things for the betterment of the team and to really achieve whatever the outcomes are that you're looking to in a quicker manner by leveraging all of those strengths.
Yeah, absolutely. So MVP, we talk a lot about team. We have our huddles. Very much the peer support aspect of MVP is that description of team where everyone comes in, they have their own strengths, and we can support each other and get help, and we can leverage that team. So tell us how you found MVP and what it means to you to be part of this team.
Yeah, so MVP, I think, is a phenomenal organization. There's been such incredible people like yourselves that I've met in the number of years that I've been with MVP Chicago since day one. So how did I know about MVP? I had connected with Nate Boyer maybe a year or two before on social media, and he and I have been talking, and because I had seen about MVP in Los Angeles and MVP in Las Vegas. And so I just, I found it an interesting organization and wanted to see how I could contribute. And I had gone out to a couple events in LA when I was out there visiting family or for work. And then when they were going to open the Chicago location, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So I was there from day one in Chicago. And it's been a great opportunity to connect with people. But you talk about the huddles. I mean, I think that's such an important part of the team too, is people to feel like they're supported so that they can share successes, they can ask for help, they can, raise their hand and say, hey, I need help with this, or I want to share this, I'm struggling with that. And I've seen such incredible growth with the people. I mean, when I talk about personalities, individuals who from day one were shy or didn't really want to open up, to coming every week to the huddles, and then them feeling more comfortable and building relationships. And even here in Chicago in the very beginning, just like with any team, there's, the storming, norming, conforming, all of those things. Like in the beginning, it was, okay, we come to this event Wednesdays and we work out and we're in the huddle. But that was kind of the thing. Okay, see you next week. And it's really evolved into a community, and we do things outside of just the weekly huddles. And so, I mean, it's been fantastic to just see the evolution over the years and to continue to be a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Susie, our clinician and director of whole health.
Hi, Jen. How are you?
I'm good, Susie. Thank you for
Haven't worn
having me.
it down yet, which I don't think we can do, because knowing your resume. So, so that's pretty awesome. I'm always struck by people who want to know. There's two kinds of people. People want to know and people don't want to know. And you are obviously a person who wants to know. And then what happens is you can share with us what you know. So one of the most important questions I think we ask ourselves, and certainly it happens in MVP, is what's the toughest lesson that you had to face and learn either in the military or in, your business life or life in general?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's so many lessons, and we should be learning through every interaction, right? A positive one, a not so fun one. And I mean, I think the biggest thing is, life doesn't go as planned. When I left corporate to be an entrepreneur, I had a plan. And I thought I had it all figured out. And I was like, I have a JD, I have an MBA, I have all this corporate experience, I've got this. And I left right before COVID. And so we all know what that was like. And my whole plan, the market that I was looking in, my whole business was focused on, speaking in corporations and doing different training workshops. And after COVID, none of that was here, and so I had to pivot and figure out, okay, what am I going to do now? I have 5 kids, single parent, so there's the pressures of having to raise the family and pay all the bills, and my market has just evaporated. So I think the biggest thing is to remember is life will always change it up on you. It's never going to go the way that you want, and it's really about how do you figure out what you need to. I mean, high performers, you can put them in any situation and they'll figure it out. And so it's really about leveraging the team, right? As we talked about earlier, and it's okay to not have the answers. It's okay to say, hey, I need help, because your team will want to support you and help you, but you got to ask for help. And I think that's another important lesson, if I can just share. I mean, when I was early in my career, I never wanted to admit that I didn't know something or ask for help, because I felt like that was a sign of weakness, right? Like, or I wasn't doing my job because I'm asking for help. But in reality, having the courage to raise your hand and say, hey, can you help connect me with someone? Or, hey, I'm struggling with this. Do you know anyone that can help? That's actually a sign of weakness, or not weakness, strength, excuse me. And so I think it's important to remember that as we have to adjust and adapt and overcome, don't forget that you're not alone and that you have a team, and leverage that team, because they are there to support you and they want to support you, but they can't if they don't know how, or that you need help.
It's a great lesson, a lesson that you keep learning over and over and over again and get better at. Right? That's the great news about lessons and practicing. So when you're not doing these 100 things and the 5 kids and everything else that you're doing, what is the thing that gets you to stop moving the ball? How do you de-stress? How do you make sure that you're taking care of you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, a lot of people will joke around and be like, Jen, do you ever get any sleep? And I'm like, well, yeah, actually, I try to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep every day, because it's so important for our bodies to reset and our minds to reset, to recharge. We need that. There's some people that think, oh, you got to wake up at 4 a.m. and grind and grind and grind till midnight and just get a couple hours of sleep. And that's actually very detrimental to your mind and your body over time, right? So for me, I'm very mindful of the need to call the time out and take time to decompress, to rest, and just to enjoy life too. And so for me, it's really about understanding that we have 24 hours in the day. No, none of us have more, none of us have less. So how are you going to prioritize that time to accomplish what you need to, but also to make time for the things that are important to you? Because I think it's so easy for us to put that last part on the back burner, right? The other stuff. It's all about work, and everything else will just kind of fit in as you have time. And so for me, one way that I look at things, that I tell people a lot, is every time you say yes to something and give your time to something, it's at the expense of something else. So is that thing that you might say yes to worth it today? Or is your time better served somewhere else? And can you do that thing another day? Or maybe it's not important at all, but just being mindful of how are you spending every single minute. And so I'm a planner. I plan out my days. I plan out my weeks. Of course, that plan it adjusts often, but I at least have a baseline. And what I'm also scheduling in there is time for me to decompress and time to spend with the family. And I think events like when you have some significant event in your life that makes you pause, it's easier to kind of reframe yourself to do that. I recently had a friend who played in the NFL who had passed away. And so it again makes you pause and really think about what's important in life. But I think we shouldn't only wait for those types of events to pause and think about how are we spending our time, and are we focused on the right things on a daily, weekly basis.
I really appreciate that. I have a friend that took the word win and turned it into what's important now.
I like that.
Really important. If you do that on a daily basis, even an hourly basis, can help you come back to the present. Like, what do I need to do this minute versus always living in the future? So I appreciate that. I think that also helps us with thriving. So when we came up with the title for this series, Thrive, it was very clear to us that so many people feel like they're surviving, but they're not thriving. So with all of your wisdom and experience, what could you share with us that are at least a couple of key components, and I think you've mentioned some already. What is some of the key components to thriving?
Yeah, and I like how you talk about surviving versus thriving, because they are different. And surviving is just trying to make it through the day, right? Thriving is you're living in your purpose, you're focusing on the things that you want to be, and you're being intentional with how you spend your days. And I think that's the important thing. Is I mentioned just a few minutes ago about the planning, like thinking about what's important now. What do I, when you live a life of randomness and you're just kind of taking each day as it comes, then you're just really surviving, right? You're in a more of a reactionary mode. Whereas when you're being intentional and planning things out, you're being more proactive. You're setting the plan or the baseline for the day or the week, and then you have some purpose and deliberateness with how you're allocating your time. And of course, things are going to come up. Kids are going to call you and they're going to need something. There will be things that disrupt your day, but then you can adjust as you need to. But at least you've got a schedule or a plan for something. And I just wanted to share too, like because people will be like, well, Jen, you're so busy, how do you do it all? And like I just said, I have this plan. I say no to a lot of things, or it's not today, it's not now. So for example, let's say, and going back to de-stressing, let's say I have this long, like 10 items on this list, and I'm looking at this list. I'm like, you know what? Items number 6, 7, and 10, that's not important to me today. I can do that next week even, because it's not an urgent thing. By pushing things off, you're reducing your stress because you're feeling less overwhelmed, but also in your brain, you're like, I'll take care of that next week. So you're not worrying about it because you already have a plan for when you're going to get it done. And I think that's so important, because that just takes some of the mental weight off of our shoulders when we know that there's always going to be more things that we need to do than what we have time to do, right? And when you can allocate your future time for those things that aren't as critical in the here and now, it makes you feel like you've got it more together and that you are thriving and you have more time to be intentional on the things that are important in the here and now. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And as a clinician and focusing on whole health, which means physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual, it says to me that sometimes we're moving because of anxiety, what we're afraid of, what we think needs to happen, or we can be stuck in depression. And so your idea of being intentional and having a plan, even if it's one thing on the list, just one, that may be helpful to get somebody off the couch when they're feeling like they can't survive or thrive. I think that's really important, is to see that there's two sides. There's a big spectrum between doing and not doing, and surviving and thriving. So I appreciate that, because I think we all can find something on that spectrum that helps us thrive. And it doesn't have to be 10 or even 7 things. It could be that one thing that gets me off.
Right. The other thing I would say too, if I can, is it's important we all have days that we're not feeling motivated, or something has happened that kind of takes our spirits down. And in those moments, it's important to have something that can be a pick-me-upper. And so what I tell people too that they should do is write a few notes to yourself, so that at any time when you're feeling a little bit down, you can come back to those notes and they can remind you of how great you are, or just why you need to continue to focus on the things that matter to you. And just having those close by on your desk or in your wallet, just as a pick-me-up, can be important too.
Thank you so much. I'm going to pass it back to Lisa. Thank you so much for being here and for all you do and all you give.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's so great to meet with you today, Jen. And I think honestly, if we need more time, because everything that you discussed just prompted so many more questions in my mind, at least, and about who you are and what you've done in your life. Not that you're old, right? And so in that short time, and one of the questions that stuck out to me too, as you're talking about, I mean, you have done so much, so many achievements, you have 5 children, an incredible life. Where do you, along with the, kind of the stress component, but where do you find joy? Or what is your joy?
That's a great question. I mean, for me, it's really about being able to serve others. And I get so much joy out of knowing that I can make an impact on somebody else. I mean, it doesn't have to be a big, it could be, you know, small hire. I will randomly be out and I'll just start I'm an extrovert, so I'll start talking to people. And because for me, it's not about just talking to them. It's an opportunity to have an interaction. You can learn and grow. But for me, I want to make people have a brighter day, as corny as that sounds. So for me, like, it's unexpected, right? Most people don't randomly just talk to someone in the Starbucks or the grocery store. And for me, I want to bring a dose of positivity to someone. And by knowing that I'm able to do that, because I can see their reaction, like, that makes me feel good. And that's how I get joy.
That's so true. I've had those same interactions where it's just a positive comment that you can just see them brighten up. And again, you don't know what kind of day they're having. So I really appreciate that. And I think with Merging Vets and Players, you know, we are in that business, right? We are a veteran service, and of course, veteran and athlete service organization that does serve others. So we appreciate you being a member of the organization and also giving back to the organization. Especially talking with us today and discussing your background, your life, how you came to be an MVP member and champion. So is there anything else that you want to just add to the conversation?
I mean, I think something that's important for people to remember is we all have choices. And so it's the choices that we make that are going to get us where we want to go or not if we don't make the right choices. And I'm not talking about morality choices, but it's just, you know, even what are you going to do each day, right? We talked a lot about the intentionality in the plan. I think it's also about the energy that how you show up. We all know that how you show up to life matters. So it's important to make sure you're showing up in a way that is consistent with who you want to be. And we talked about team, and don't forget your team. It's so important to be a good teammate, but also remember your team is there for you when you need it. I mean, that's one thing that I love about MVP is the amazing people that are part of this team, and not just here locally. I mean, all of you and the other people that I've met. I mean, it's just a phenomenal organization. I've just been so fortunate to be a part of it. And, you know, I just look forward to the continued things that you guys do to evolve and grow and make an impact. And also, you know, however I can contribute is something that I'm always looking to. And if anybody ever wants to reach out, I'm happy to be on anyone's team and be a resource. So, you know, I love being able to serve others.
Well, thank you for being a part of our team. And along those lines, of course, we couldn't do what we do without people like you, our members, our funders, all of our community partners. As you discussed, we're doing so much more in the community. So we appreciate everybody who assists us. And if anybody out there would like to get involved with MVP, call to action, go to our website, sign up if you qualify to be a membership. But also, more than that, we do so much in the community. Partner with us in the community and find ways to get involved with us, whether it's being a member, a community supporter, or volunteer. So we appreciate you being part of this MVP Thrive series and helping us understand better ways to thrive together. So thank you so much. And we look forward to the next conversation, because there will be another.